Jets, Jets, baby! Woo! What's going on? What's coolin'? I hope you guys are doing amazing. That's right. If you didn't know by the intro, we got the Jets, Jets today. And we're going to roster break this thing down after free agency. What do they need to do? We got a lot of things to figure out. But so excited to see AG Aaron Glenn back with the New York Jets, man. Hopefully he can finish his career here. Like he said, that'd be so cool for him to come first circle. Get this thing together. He's working hard to get the culture set back up. Darren Muji as well, the new GM. Let's get into the roster, all right? I can't wait any further. It's the Jets. I'm ready to go. You look at this offensive line. For the first time in quite a minute, I will say this offensive line has some blood, has some life to it, and I really like it. We have one void to fill, and that's not bad. Like, you go into the draft with one hole to fill, you can do it, right? Over the past several years, it's like, we got 5 holes to fill, and like, oh my gosh, or maybe like 3, but mainly, like, now we got one hole to fill. That is totally different, right? We can do that. We can do that in one draft. Right tackle being the biggest question mark. And I think this is something we have to address early in the draft. Unless they do something crazy in free agent. I mean, you got Jedrick Wills, I guess, out there right now. You can move him back to his native position at right tackle, going back to Alabama. It is an option for them. However, with where the roster is currently at, this sets up to be a first, second round at latest need. I do like Carter Warren. I will say I was extremely high on Carter Warren, and I still think that he's got a chance. Okay, I want to say a chance. You bring in Chukuma Okorafor. Not a lot of guarantees there. It's only like $700,000 guaranteed. To me, he's more of a backup player that is going to compete in training camp, see how things go, and then we'll rock it out from there. The good news, like I said, though, you got Olu Fashan, who I thought was excellent at left tackle, especially when he moved back to left tackle for them. And then you got John Simpson, who's been excellent. Joe Tippmann, Elijah Vera Tucker, all been really, really good. Just got to fill that right tackle position, and that's what we'll look at doing. Then we go on to the wide receiving room. I think this wide receiving core is fine. Like, ideally, could you upgrade at wide receiver 2? Absolutely. Alan Lazard, Josh Reynolds, solid receivers, but certainly, could you look at upgrading there? Yes. I do think that there are other bigger areas of need, right? Such as tight end being one of those. Tight end is a huge need. It's something that they have to address. Jeremy Reichert, to me, has not showed anything, and I don't feel confident at all going into next season with him as even a backup per se. Like, we need to add more there. Maybe as a backup, okay. Stone Smart. I kind of like him coming from the Chargers. I thought he was pretty dang good when I saw him get his opportunities. He's at least, if nothing else, a good receiving tight end. Like, he's basically a glorified big wide receiver, in other words. However, he was good at it. He can make plays, and he can, has some yak ability as well. So I think he'd actually, if it were me, I'd put him as the starter. No matter what, though, tight end is the top priority here. Wide receiver, of course, you could use somebody else. And maybe like somebody with a little more speed. Maybe you can find a Jameson Williams type into this offense. Like, maybe that's what they're missing here. Overall, it's not going to be a first, second round type of need there. I think tight end is your first, second round need. And then we go on to the running back position. Breece Hall. And you got Braylon Allen, Isaiah Davis. This room looks good. This is not a need, in my opinion. You could always add more depth at the running back position. Overall, like, this is not something I'm going to get out of bed. Like, oh my gosh, we got to add a running back in here. We're pretty good. And then on to the quarterback position. Look, this is another area where I'm not personally going after a quarterback in this draft. I'm rocking with Justin Fields. He's the guy. We're going to build this roster. Let's see what Justin Fields has. Let's not create any controversy by drafting a mid-round quarterback. Let's just go with Justin Fields. If it doesn't work out, then hey, we're picking top 5 and hopefully a better quarterback class, and we can just get a quarterback then and go about it there. We've got Tyrod Taylor as well, so if things get really bad, then Tyrod can come in with his experience. You got Jordan Travis. I know it's a little bit of a setback with injuries. However, for me personally, this is not something that I'm looking at drafting, at least right now in this draft class. Let's rock Justin Fields, man. Let's go. I'm super excited to see what Justin Fields looks like in that green, man. It looks good already. And then on to the defense side of the ball, where there's a lot more voids than I originally thought. And you look at this roster on the defensive line, they've lost a lot of depth, and that, to me, it needs to be replenished. This defensive tackle position is going to need more help. Now, I do like Brian Coward. I think he's a guy that is like a stealth free agent signing. I was curious to see where he would go. He is a solid run defender, and he holds the point of attack. He's not the biggest guy or anything like that, but I think he does a good job holding his leverage and holding those one-on-one battles. And you put him next to Quentin Williams, he's not going to be the flashy guy, all right? But Quentin Williams, he's the flashy guy, right? He's the number one guy. I think Coward's the guy. He really is. Now, long-term, he's only on a 1-year contract. It's not a lot of guarantee. I don't even know if there's any guarantees behind it. It's like a $1 million deal. So there's no guarantees that he's going to be the starter. Same thing. Derek Nottie, I think, has the most guarantees out of all these guys Fedarian Mathis has no guarantees. Now, he has the biggest cap number out of all three of those guys right there if he does make the roster. So we'll see if he does or not. But Noddy, Coward, they're solid rotational players, if nothing else. They need to add into the room. And that clearly is like a round 3, round 2, even possible need, especially in this draft class. I think the depth is pretty good that they can find a guy on day 2, early day 3 to be the long-term pairing with Quentin Williams. You got Leonard Taylor III, who I think is going to be a great rotational pass rusher on this defensive line. I'm so glad they got him. But the edge position, this is kind of another sneaky need for them, especially with Jermaine Johnson coming off a torn Achilles injury. That's something where he may not be ready to go by week 1 of the season. So that's something also to consider with this. I do think Michael Clemens, Eric Watts, Brendan McGregor, Rashad Weaver, they brought in as well. Like, it's okay there, but once again, like, they could really use some more depth in there. They've lost a lot of depth, and I would still like for them to bring in a veteran into this room to help out, especially early on in the season. So between the draft and also free agency, this is something I would try to bring somebody else in and also bring somebody in the draft as well. Now, I do think Watts, Clemens should be your main rotation early on, and Watts is actually a guy that kind of interesting to me. Anyway, that's something that is a early day 3 at latest type of need, I would say, to bring up some depth. And then onto the linebacking core. This is another area that it could be a very sneaky need for them. And the main reason for this, especially with Jamie Sherwood getting a nice contract, and we can talk about that now because I think he was worth it. I know people say, oh, it's an overpay. You did what? Look, I think you keep your young guys that have grown, developed, worked hard. That, to me, is Jamie Sherwood. He has gotten better and better and better. He's worked so hard through his first 4 years. He deserved that contract. And he's a good freaking football player that has a lot of upside. Like, he's got all the tools, the athletic traits. He was the team's MVP. So it's just like, yes, Jamie Sherwood, I am totally fine paying him that contract, $15 million. He's worth it. And I think long-term, we'll look back at that and say, hey, this was actually a solid contract. I mean, we'll see. Okay, injuries can happen, all those sort of things. But Quincy Williams, my main point of this is Williams might want a raise now. And if he doesn't get a raise, he could be a guy that gets traded on draft day. So don't be shocked if he were to be moved at some point this offseason, especially if the Jets are saying, we're not going to be able to pay him. And that is definitely a possibility. They may end up moving him. And if that were the case, if you look at this room, could they use somebody else? Absolutely. So we could be looking at that and adding one more linebacker somewhere on day 3. I don't think it's an early need, but I do think it's something we could look at, especially if they do trade Quincy Williams. Then it might be an earlier need than that. So, and they probably get some sort of draft compensation in regard to that as well. On to the cornerback room. This is going to be, while yes, you can always add cornerbacks. Like, let's just be real. You can always do that. You have injuries, etc. But overall, this is not something I'm going to prioritize. Sauce Gardner, you got to give him a contract just like Garrett Wilson. Anybody who's highlighted in black like that, that means they're going to be going into a 5th-year contract possibility scenario. Now, it doesn't mean he's a free agent as of this moment, but I doubt, the Jets, they're not going to let him hit the free agency market. They would either trade him or they're going to give him a contract. Hopefully they give him a contract. Brandon Stevens brought in, though, from the Ravens. Do I like this deal? Actually, I'm okay with it. I know some people are lower on this. Stevens got targeted a ton, and he did get beat. Like, he needs to work on turning his head more consistently. He doesn't have elite athleticism either. But overall, I think he will be better in Aaron Glenn's system, and he's also out for something to prove. But I do think Stevens is a really tenacious run defender, and he's also good at the catch point. So those are a couple of things that I really like about Stevens, and maybe a little more man coverage than he did last year in the zone defense, which I don't think is really his thing. I think he's going to be better in more of a linear or a man coverage style of system where he can be up in front, like in press coverage, get in your face, because he is a little grabby. Let's be real. He can go call for penalties. But we saw a lot of that too with DJ Reed last season. So I don't know. I think in general, we'll be fine. I really do. I think it's not the worst signing ever. And I believe in Darren Muji that's going to be with Aaron Glenn. They'll figure that out, and they've got a plan in place. And Stevens is also a tough worker. I've heard nothing but great things about him. Michael Carter in the slot, just got to stay healthy. Isaiah Oliver can play inside out. He's going to be our main swing corner. You got Quintez Stiggers, Jarek Bernard-Converse as, competing for that 5th cornerback position. So that's why I'm not overly concerned about this. We have a decent cornerback room. It's not my number one priority, right? Safety, this is more of an area that we're going to need to draft. Everybody's a free agent after this season, once again. So we need to make sure we're adding some guys in here. I heard they were trying to get Talanoa Hufanga, which would have been dope too. But I like Andre Sisco, and I'm okay with this signing. I think he's a guy that had a terrible season in the system of Ryan Nielsen, but coming over here with Aaron Glenn, I think he's going to have a resurgence, and he's a ball hawk, and that's what we need. Yes, he got beat deep he had some busted coverages. That's going to get talked about, and it's on a film, multiple times he got beat. So those are some things he's gonna have to iron out. However, like the instincts and the overall like ball hawking ability, like I know it's there. I've seen it over and over. We were talking about him maybe as a potential all-pro candidate this year. Like has had some really good time in his past, and I do think there's a lot of upside on that contract. So he could be a long-term guy. Tony Adams probably going to be moving to more of a box hybrid role. I'm sure they'll move both of those guys around. This is a draft need, though. So this is something on day 3. Let's at least add some depth. And then just in case long term, if we only bring back one of these guys, then we need to try to find another starter opposite of them. Here we go. It's the Jets draft. Okay, why am I talking like Batman or even Bateman? It's Armin Embu, Bateman, but Armin Embu, the offensive tackle from Missouri, right tackle. Clear as day. You plug him in there, right tackle. Problem solved. We have bookend tackles, hopefully, for the next 10 years. Like, that would be a dream come true, or at least 8 years, something like that, right? I can dream as a Jets fan. Armin Embu, though, with his athletic traits, you saw the picture with him, Tristan Wirfs, Trent Williams, and then also Will Campbell, and that conversation for elite athleticism and overall ability. Like, this guy, when you're in that conversation, it's always fun. Now, there are things he needs to work on, okay? Let's not go too crazy with the hype train. He's already gone really, really high. His hand placement needs to improve. And those are things you can improve. It's just the offensive coaching and work ethic and things like that. The talent, the traits, the down blocking, run blocking ability, it's all there with Armin Embu. The pass protection was pretty much flawless this year. Held his own. Now, he did get some chip help, okay? So when he got beat, he did get some help. And I like to point that out there, the good and the bad with him. He needs to clean up that hand technique because some longer edge rushers, they got into his pads and pushed him back. Like, that was a problem for him this season. And as a young player, he's turned 21 years old. He's a young guy that is going to develop, and I feel really good about this. And bookend tackles, like, I can just dream. Like I said, it's a dream. And then we go on to Elijah Arroyo. We're going to, go get a tight end. And I just think, you talk about the conversation with Colston Loveland, Tyler Warren in the first round. I get that. But for me personally, I love this tight end class. I think there's a lot of guys on day 2 you can find that are day 1 impacts. Elijah Arroyo is one of those guys. And I think he'd be a first-round guy if it weren't for the injury history. And that's really his biggest Achilles heel is the injuries. And if you look on his tape, like, you can make the argument he's just as talented, if not more talented, than Colston Loveland. I think, in terms of athleticism, Loveland is still a tier above, but he's right there. Like, his athletic traits are right there with Colston Loveland. Warren's an overall, better physical specimen than Elijah Arroyo. But Arroyo's not a bad blocker. He's a tough-nosed blocker. He's not afraid to block, right? He's a guy that's coming in there. He's going to at least try. So he may not be the most dominant, physically gifted guy in that regard, but he will try, and I respect that. So he is going to come in here with his receiving ability. As long as he stays healthy, this could be a Sam Laporta type of pick for Tanner Egstan and his new offense that he's going to instill for Aaron Glenn and this team. And then we go on to third round. Jordan Phillips, right? They got Brian Coward. He knows the thing about Maryland, and you go get a Maryland defensive tackle. Jordan Phillips is an explosive, run-defending type of player. His production, though, as a pass rusher, definitely limiting, but he does have some tools there, and he showed that in the one-on-ones in the Shrine Bowl. Like, he could do arm overs and, different type of pass rushes and stuff like that. He's got a long arm. He's got different moves, and I like that, right? He's got a swim move. I think the tools are there. The athleticism, I'll tell you right now, he looks scary, and I mean that in a good way. Like, I wouldn't want to meet this guy anywhere because he'd take one look at me and just, boom, I'd go down goes Frazier. Jordan Phillips, though, nice little developmental interior defensive lineman. And then we go on, hey, I think he can start early on, too, and play significant roles. This is more of a developmental guy, Q Robinson. I am a huge fan of this. And as a Jets fan, I'm putting a little bit of emphasis on guys that I'm fans of. Q Robinson from Alabama is a guy that is speed to power. That's really his game right now. He has got no counters. He doesn't really have much of a pass rush plan. I'm just going to win with speed to power, and I'm going to run right down through you. Like, that's really what he does at the moment, and it works, right? I mean, he's got some inside counters, right? That's kind of what he is. Speed to power, inside counter. That's really his game right now, but the athletic traits with him are really good. And he's actually a better block shedder than you would think he is for a guy who's only 243 pounds. And he's got the arm length to do it. So if you can put on some more pounds, some more muscle mass, he could develop into a really good edge rusher. And I just love what he brings upside-wise in this fourth round. On to round number 5, it's R.J. Mickens, the safety from Clemson. I'm going to go ahead and get a safety with some really good athletic traits, tested very well. And on film, he's fast. He can cover one-on-one in the slot if you need him to. He gives you maybe a little bit of not Brian Branch. I mean, Brian Branch is unbelievable, but he gives you that versatility. He's definitely not as physical either as Brian Branch. Like, Brian Branch can literally hang and hold his own. I think Miggins, he's a little stronger, get a little better in run defense, and overall, like deep coverage, he was exposed. He did get beat at times too. Once again, a developmental safety in the 5th round with traits and that can cover. And then we go on to Cody Simon, linebacker from Ohio State, the Ohio State University. He was so good this season. Now, he's got some limiting traits. He's not a great athlete, I would say. He's a solid athlete, but he definitely not a sideline to sideline guy. But you got Jamie and Sherwood. Go get Cody Simon as that early down run defender, right? He could be like the long-term Mike possibly, and you could keep Jamie and Sherwood as your weak side linebacker. Do something like that. I think Simon is your prototypical early down run defender type. And that's really, if you look at Aaron Glenn, what he's going to want, he's going to want one guy who could be a good run defender, and then one guy who can kind of be a jack of all trades, helping coverage and things like that. So Simon can be your run defender guy. And then on to our next pick, Arian Smith, one of the most polarizing players in this entire draft. And what I mean by that, he has got crazy good speed. He can break too. He's not just a track star. You see these track star receivers, seems like every year, but they can't run routes. Arian Smith can literally run routes. At least he's shown flashes of running routes. I see him, and he's creating space for himself. The problem, he can't catch the ball. Oh, my goodness. What does he have, like a 20% drop rate through his career? Like, it's bad. It's really bad. His physicality, those things, can you coach that? Is that something that he can get better at? Yes. But at the same time, a lot of times you see these guys with these high drop rates. It doesn't, it's hard, right? Sometimes there are instances, but for the most part, it seems like it's like going to be one of those things. And if you can't catch the football, you're not going to be able to get on the field. And he had so many drops on film. So that is the biggest thing here. But he has elite trade. Like, he would be a first-round prospect. If he could catch the ball, he'd be a first-round pick. He just has those type of movement skills. We'll see, right? Maybe he can be the JMO for this team in this offense. And that's what I kind of was thinking and envisioning, hopefully, right? And then final pick of the draft, Luke Newman, offensive lineman, formerly of Holy Cross. He was tackled there, moved inside to guard for Michigan State, where I think that's where, personally, that's where he's going to play. He's only got 31-inch arms, so he's very undersized in that regard. He's got like 9.5-inch hands. So you look at the measurables, he's definitely on the undersized portion. But here's the thing with Luke Newman. And look, he's not probably going to get drafted, or he's going to get drafted late if he does. I throw out my guys. Luke Newman is one of those dudes that I'm kind of stamping the table for. I do think he's underrated. And he is a guy that has good lateral agility. I think he takes the punch to defenders despite his shorter arms. It is a problem. He gets over his toes. He gets a little off balance because I do think he has to make up for that limitation by trying to strike defenders first because he knows he's got limitations. But I think he does have enough power to get the job done. I mean, he's not going to continue to displace blockers. Where he really thrives is his lateral agility, his pass protection. And I've only watched one game this season from Michigan State. So let's be frank about this. There's not much film on Michigan State. I watched the Michigan game, which I felt like was a good evaluation. I watched him go against one-on-one against Mason Graham and also against Kenneth Grant. Now, I've done a full evaluation on Holy Cross, and I really liked his tape there. But even at Michigan, he showed a lot of things at Holy Cross that he had, a lot of things I really liked about him. And in general, he held his own. He lost a couple of reps to Mason Graham, who hasn't really, right? When you go up against elite guys like that, you're going to lose some reps. He held his own, though, especially against Kenneth Grant. I thought he really did a good job against him and really dominated Grant. Overall, Luke Newman, watch out for him. He's nothing else, a good pass protector, has some limiting traits, and he will get longer guys are going to get into his chest and push him back or cloth pull him. I think cloth pulling is one of his biggest weaknesses. He's got to work on that. So that's the draft there. Jets fans or any football fans, let me know what you think. Agree or disagree. What would you do differently? So many options, of course. Depends on who's available, who's on the board. But you get an offensive tackle, Armin Embu, to be bookend tackles. Look at this offensive line. I'm so excited about this, man. Pay Elijah Vera-Tucker. You then have a lot of your core offensive linemen under contract. You like 4 of them under contract for the next 3-4 years. And I feel like this offensive line has something special in the works for this offense to run the rock, keep Justin Fields protected. Because, hey, Justin Fields' pocket presence has not been the best through his career, so let's just be real. We need to make sure we're doing a good job protecting him. And also making sure we have some more weapons for him. And we got Elijah Arroyo, who is going to be a receiving tight end. And that's why I didn't prioritize wide receiver either early. I just felt like tight end, much bigger need for this team. You get Elijah Arroyo, who I think can start right away. I don't see any issue with him coming in as a day one starter. Stone Smart, Jeremy Rucker can be depth pieces. I mean, maybe Smart starts early on, and then Elijah Arroyo works in, eventually being the starter. But I think that he would pretty much be the starter pretty quickly. That's my opinion on it. And then wide receiver, we do add in a speedster, Arian Smith, and hopefully he can work out that drop rate and get better with his hands. And if he can, there'd be a lot of upside to be that JMO in this offense. I'll say that right now. Luke Newman is some more depth on the interior. And we didn't add a quarterback, we didn't add a running back. I feel like we're good to go. Next year, if Justin Fields struggles, then you add a quarterback then. And then on the defense side of the ball, my main priority here, let's get depth on the defensive line. This is an area they've got to do. You look at this defensive line, we've depleted so much depth. So we added Q Robinson, Jordan Phillips. I think Brian Coward will end up being the starter day one. I know Derek Nottie probably is going to be the favorite. I just, struggle some with the tape. I thought Coward was pretty dang good for the Bears this season, and throughout his career, he's been pretty dang solid. Nottie's had his ups and downs this year. I thought he really struggled, but I do think he can bounce back. So we'll see how that works out. But Phillips comes in there as that one tech next to Quentin Williams, hopefully for the future. Like, that's what I see. Phillips can be early on rotation with those guys, and then long-term the starter. Q Robinson, more of just a pick that I like. I'm a big Q Robinson guy on day 3. I think he's got the elite traits you look for and could really develop with some more added muscle mass into a quality starter even. Like, I think he's got the potential. And then we had a linebacker, because that's another area I think that we need to do, right? And especially Quincy Williams, if he wants to get a raise and the Jets aren't willing to do that, then we need to make sure we add in a Mike run defending style linebacker to pair along with Jamian Sherwood. And then finally, safety, we got to add at least one safety, right? I mean, they could see them adding a safety earlier in this, depending on how they feel on it. But I think Andre Sisco, Tony Adams, those are your 2 starters heading into the season. We need to add some depth. And hopefully RJ Mickens, with his upside, he's got the athletic traits. So let him develop for a season, and maybe he can be the long-term starter for them. And that's what we did, man. Let me know, like I said, what you think about this draft. Agree or disagree. But I hope you guys have a really cool day. My name's Steve Sling. I'm doing my thing. I'll talk to you later.